March 19, 1945, 10 miles south of Wesel, Germany. The German artillery observers watching through their binoculars that morning witnessed something that defied every principle of armored warfare they had learned. American Sherman tanks were materializing from empty fields where reconnaissance had confirmed no armor existed just hours before. Through the morning mist along the Rhine River, entire battalions of tanks appeared to be assembling for what looked like a massive crossing operation. The 116th Panzer Division's forward observers counted over 600 tanks and self-propelled guns, positioning themselves in attack formation. German 88mm anti-tank guns swiveled toward the growing threat, their crews preparing for the inevitable assault. Field telephones buzzed with urgent reports flowing up the chain of command. American armor massing south of Wesel. Immediate reinforcement required. But the German gunners were aiming at ghosts. What they saw through their optics were rubber tanks weighing 93 pounds, inflated with air pumps and positioned by four-man crews who could carry them like oversized parade floats. The roar of tank engines that echoed across the Rhine came from truck-mounted speakers playing recordings made months earlier at Fort Knox, Kentucky. The radio chatter intercepted by German signals units originated from carefully scripted performances by American soldiers reading from pages of manufactured dialogue. This was Operation Fearson, the culmination of the most audacious military deception program in American history, executed by 1,105 men who carried paintbrushes instead of rifles, operated speakers instead of cannons, and deployed imagination as their primary weapon. The transformation had begun 18 months earlier, when American military planners recognized a truth that would revolutionize warfare. In modern combat, what the enemy believed could be more important than what was real. Perception could defeat superior firepower. Illusion could save more lives than armor. On January 20th, 1944, the United States Army activated the 23rd Headquarters Special Troops at Camp Forest, Tennessee. While training camps across America produced infantry divisions and tank battalions, Camp Forest assembled something unprecedented in military history. Artists from New York's fashion houses, sound engineers from Hollywood studios, actors from Broadway stages, and architects from prestigious firms. The average IQ of the unit stood at 119, among the highest in the entire United States Army. The recruitment process itself broke every conventional military pattern. Captain Fred Fox, who would become the unit's official historian, arrived expecting standard military training. Instead, he found classrooms where soldiers studied German military psychology, workshops where engineers developed inflatable vehicles, and sound studios where technicians recorded the acoustic signatures of different military units. Bill Blass, who would later become one of America's most famous fashion designers, learned to paint division insignia on jeeps. Ellsworth Kelly, future renowned artist, practiced positioning dummy artillery pieces for maximum visual effect from aerial reconnaissance. Art Kane, destined to become a legendary photographer, documented the techniques of military illusion. The technical challenge they faced seemed impossible. Create dummy equipment that could fool German reconnaissance from distances of several hundred yards, or from aircraft flying at 5,000 feet. The solution came from an unlikely source, the United States Rubber Company in Woonsocket, Rhode Island. Their engineers, including many recruited from tire manufacturing plants, developed a revolutionary construction method using pneumatic tubes covered with rubberized canvas. Each inflatable M4 Sherman tank consisted of separate air chambers for the hull, turret, and gun barrel. If shrapnel punctured one section, the rest remained inflated. The completed dummy weighed exactly 93 pounds and could be inflated in 20 minutes using a standard air compressor. From 100 yards away, even through binoculars, distinguishing the inflatable from a real Sherman became virtually impossible. The deception extended beyond visual trickery. At the Army Experimental Station at Pine Camp, New York, Lieutenant Colonel Hilton Howell Rayleigh commanded teams of audio engineers who spent months recording actual military units. Using state-of-the-art wire recorders weighing over 200 pounds, they captured the distinctive sounds of different tank models, the specific acoustic signature of various artillery pieces, the noise patterns of truck convoys. Each recording session required meticulous attention to detail. Tank sounds were recorded at different speeds, on various surfaces, in multiple weather conditions. The engineers discovered that a Sherman tank climbing a hill produced a distinctly different sound from one crossing level ground, details that German acoustic reconnaissance units would recognize. The playback equipment represented another engineering marvel. Each sonic unit consisted of multiple 500-pound speakers mounted on half-tracks, capable of projecting sound up to 15 miles under ideal conditions. The amplifiers, developed by Bell Laboratories, could reproduce frequencies from 50 to 10,000 Hz with minimal distortion. Sound engineers learned to adjust playback based on atmospheric conditions, wind direction, and terrain features that affected sound propagation. A library of sonic programs emerged, each designed for specific deception scenarios. Program 1 simulated tanks moving into assembly areas. Program 5 replicated bridge construction. Program 12 mimicked artillery batteries preparing for bombardment. June 14, 1944, 8 days after D-Day, the first elements of the 23rd Headquarters Special Troops arrived in Normandy. While the world focused on the massive invasion force fighting through the hedgerows, these soldiers began their shadow war. Their initial mission seemed modest, using lights to simulate activity at dummy Mulberry harbors, drawing German artillery away from the actual supply ports. But this small deception proved the concept. German batteries expended thousands of rounds on empty targets, while real supply operations continued unmolested. The unit's first major test came in August 1944 at the Siege of Brest. General Troy Middleton's 8th Corps surrounded the port city, defended by 38,000 German troops under General Hermann Bernhard Ramke. The Americans had only 3 divisions for the siege, far fewer than doctrine recommended for attacking such a fortified position. The solution came from deception. Task Force X, a detachment from the 23rd, deployed near the 2nd Infantry Division's sector with orders to simulate an entire tank battalion preparing for assault. The operation required unprecedented attention to detail. Dummy tanks were positioned in hull-down positions along ridgelines where German observers could see them. Real tanks from the 709th Tank Battalion mixed among the dummies, firing occasional rounds to reinforce the illusion. The sonic units played recordings of tanks moving into position each night, carefully timed to match the visual appearance of new vehicles each morning. Radio operators transmitted fake message traffic indicating ammunition resupply and maintenance requirements for the Phantom Battalion. Special effects teams used flash simulators, devices that produced the muzzle flash of tank guns without actual projectiles, creating the appearance of preparatory bombardment. German reaction exceeded expectations. General Ramke's intelligence section reported American armor massing for a breakthrough attempt. The German 2nd Parachute Division redeployed anti-tank guns to meet the perceived threat. When the actual American assault began on August 25th, it came from an entirely different sector where German defenses had been weakened. But Brest also revealed the double-edged nature of deception. Task Force Y, operating with the 29th Infantry Division, so successfully portrayed tank concentrations that Germans reinforced exactly where the real attack would occur. 20 additional 88mm anti-tank guns appeared in the sector after the deception began. When Company D, 709th Tank Battalion, attacked on August 25th, they met murderous fire. The lesson was clear. Deception required not just technical excellence, but strategic integration with actual operations. The mathematics of military deception proved compelling. The entire 23rd Headquarters Special Troops numbered 82 officers and 1,023 enlisted men, the size of a single battalion. Yet they could simulate 2 complete divisions totaling 30,000 troops. Each inflatable tank cost $100 to manufacture, compared to $45,000 for an actual Sherman. A sonic unit could replicate an entire armored regiment using recordings and speakers. A handful of radio operators could generate the communication traffic of a corps headquarters. September 1944 brought the unit's most challenging mission yet. As General George Patton's Third Army raced across France, his rapid advance created dangerous gaps in American lines. Near Metz, the 83rd Infantry Division's departure left a 25-mile hole in the front. If German forces discovered this vulnerability, they could split the Allied advance. For 7 critical days, the 23rd portrayed the entire 6th Armored Division holding the line. Operating just 500 yards from German positions, they inflated rubber tanks under cover of darkness, dismantled them before dawn reconnaissance flights, then repositioned them each night. Sonic units played recordings of tank maintenance, suggesting extensive armor reserves. Radio operators maintained the 6th Armored Division's communication patterns, answering queries from adjacent units as if the division remained in position. German intelligence never detected the deception. Aerial reconnaissance photos showed American armor holding defensive positions. Signals intelligence confirmed normal radio traffic. Acoustic monitoring detected appropriate vehicle movement. The actual 6th Armored Division, meanwhile, maneuvered freely to its new position, achieving complete tactical surprise when it attacked. The Ghost Warriors had bought Patton a week of invisibility for an entire armored division. The technology evolved continuously through combat experience. Engineers discovered that dummy vehicles needed wear patterns to appear authentic. Fresh tank tracks looked suspicious, so crews learned to age them with oil stains and mud. Inflatable tanks required imperfections, as real tanks showed battle damage, dirt accumulation, and crew modifications. Artists added these details with paint and attached materials. The sonic teams discovered that pure mechanical sounds seemed artificial. Real military units produced human voices, equipment dropping, occasional music from radios. Sound programs were modified to include these ambient noises. Recording sessions captured soldiers talking, laughing, complaining about food, all the audio texture of actual military life. Weather presented constant challenges. Wind could flip lightweight dummies, revealing the deception instantly. Rain pooled in inflatable vehicles, distorting their shape. Cold temperatures affected rubber integrity, causing slow leaks that gradually deflated dummies overnight. Snow accumulation patterns differed between real and fake vehicles. The unit developed solutions for each problem. Dummies were staked down with metal pins. Drainage holes prevented water accumulation. Cold weather inflation procedures compensated for temperature effects. Special brushes swept snow to match accumulation on real vehicles. December 16, 1944, the German offensive in the Ardennes caught Allied forces completely off guard. As the Battle of the Bulge developed, the 23rd received emergency orders. With American forces scrambling to contain the breakthrough, every real combat unit was desperately needed at the front. The 75th Infantry Division, newly arrived from England, needed to move immediately to the battle. But their departure would leave Luxembourg City exposed. Operation Koblenz began on December 22nd. As the real 75th Division moved toward Bastogne, the 23rd took their place, maintaining the illusion that American forces still defended Luxembourg. The deception required exceptional courage. If German forces attacked, the unit had no real defensive capability beyond small arms. Inflatable decoys couldn't stop actual German armor. Recorded sounds wouldn't halt infantry assault. For 2 weeks, they maintained the illusion while German forces remained less than 20 miles away. Radio operators responded to routine queries as the 75th Division. Military police wore 75th Division patches, directing traffic through Luxembourg as if the division remained. Local civilians, potentially including German agents, saw American soldiers displaying normal garrison behavior. The Luxembourg deception revealed an unexpected psychological dimension. German commanders, already stunned by the initial success of their offensive, became increasingly cautious about American dispositions. Intelligence reports of strong American forces in Luxembourg contributed to German hesitation about expanding their offensive southward. The Phantom Division had created doubt in German minds, precisely when boldness might have achieved breakthrough. Field Marshal Gerd von Rundstedt later admitted that uncertainty about American reserves influenced German decision-making during the critical middle phase of the Ardennes offensive. January 1945 found the 23rd operating in conditions that challenged every aspect of their deception techniques. The winter of 1944–45 was among the coldest in European history. Inflatable tanks became brittle in sub-zero temperatures, developing cracks that couldn't be patched with standard repair kits. Frozen ground made it impossible to stake down dummies securely. Sound propagation changed dramatically in cold air, requiring complete recalibration of sonic equipment. The unit, adapted through innovation. Chemical heating pads, originally designed for medical use, kept rubber pliable during inflation. Ice anchors replaced ground stakes. Sound engineers developed winter acoustic tables showing optimal volume and frequency adjustments for various temperatures. The human dimension of deception operations created unique psychological pressures. Combat soldiers faced clear enemies and definite objectives. The 23rd operated in ambiguity, never certain if their deceptions succeeded until after operations concluded. They couldn't capture territory or count destroyed enemy equipment. Success meant nothing happened, no attack on positions they simulated, no reinforcement where they operated. This negative validation challenged morale in ways traditional military training hadn't anticipated. Unit cohesion came from shared recognition that their theatrical war saved lives. Every successful deception meant American soldiers avoided battles against reinforced positions. Every German unit drawn to phantom threats was one fewer facing actual American forces. The mathematics of life and death validated their unconventional warfare. February 1945, as Allied forces prepared for the final assault into Germany, intelligence revealed the Wehrmacht's declining capabilities. Most German units operated at 50% strength or less. Fuel shortages limited vehicle movement. Ammunition supplies dwindled. Yet German forces still possessed lethal defensive capabilities, particularly when concentrated at critical points. The Rhine River represented Nazi Germany's last major natural barrier. German commanders knew the Allies must cross it. The only questions were where and when. This strategic context set the stage for Operation Viersen, the 23rd's masterpiece of military deception. Lieutenant Colonel Merrick Truly, attached to 9th Army Headquarters, conceived an audacious plan. While the actual crossing would occur at Wesel, the 23rd would simulate massive preparations 10 miles south, portraying the 30th and 79th Infantry Divisions massing for assault. The operation's scope dwarfed all previous deceptions. 2 complete divisions meant 30,000 troops, 1,200 vehicles, 450 artillery pieces, plus supporting elements. The 82 officers and 1,023 enlisted men of the 23rd would need to create this illusion while actual assault forces assembled secretly near the real crossing sites. Preparation began March 18th. Working through the night, crews inflated over 600 dummy vehicles, the entire unit's inventory plus additional equipment borrowed from British deception units. Each dummy was positioned precisely according to aerial photography studies, showing how real units deployed near river crossings. Artillery pieces were placed in battery formations. Tanks assembled in attack positions. Supply dumps appeared with trucks arriving and departing on schedule. The sonic program ran continuously for 72 hours. Speakers broadcast the sound of bridge construction, pile drivers working, engineers shouting instructions. Vehicle sounds indicated constant traffic bringing supplies and reinforcements. Radio traffic followed scripts developed from monitoring actual division communications, complete with authentication codes, grid references, and standard military terminology. The special effects teams outdid themselves. Flash simulators created the appearance of artillery registration fire. Smoke generators obscured certain areas while leaving others visible, matching the concealment patterns of real military operations. Engineers constructed actual bridge components on the riverbank, though never enough to complete a crossing. The incomplete construction suggested preparation for an assault still days away. German reaction was immediate and decisive. The 116th Panzer Division, held in operational reserve, moved toward the deception area. Additional artillery battalions deployed opposite the simulated divisions. The German 86th Corps commander reported American preparations for a major assault south of Wesel, recommending immediate reinforcement. Reconnaissance aircraft repeatedly photographed the deception area. German intelligence counted tanks, evaluated artillery positions, analyzed traffic patterns. Every assessment confirmed massive American preparation. The Luftwaffe, hoarding its dwindling aircraft for critical moments, launched precious reconnaissance missions over the fake assembly areas. German artillery fired harassment barrages at the Phantom forces. Each shell exploding among rubber tanks represented ammunition not available at the actual crossing sites. The 23rd's crews performed surreal battlefield repairs, patching punctured dummies while under actual artillery fire, maintaining the illusion even as real shells exploded around them. March 23, 1945, at 9 p.m., the actual Rhine crossing began. The 30th and 79th Divisions, the real ones stationed 10 miles north, crossed against minimal opposition. German forces remained concentrated opposite the deception. The first assault waves encountered only scattered resistance from second-line troops. By dawn, American forces had established solid bridgeheads with remarkably light casualties. The 9th Army G2 intelligence section reported German complete surprise. Captured maps showed German defensive positions concentrated exactly where the 23rd had operated. A German intelligence overlay placed the 79th Division precisely where the Phantom Force had appeared. The 30th Division had vanished from German calculations entirely. Lieutenant General William Simpson, commanding 9th Army, issued unprecedented praise. In his after-action report, he credited the deception with saving thousands of American lives. The Rhine crossing, potentially the bloodiest river assault in military history, had succeeded with minimal casualties because German forces defended against ghosts. The mathematics were stark. The 30th Division suffered 41 killed crossing the Rhine. Similar operations without deception averaged 600 to 800 fatalities. The 79th Division reported 63 killed. Comparable assault river crossings typically cost 500 to 700 lives. The 23rd's deception had prevented at least 1,000 American deaths in a single operation. But success came with its own casualties. 3 members of the 23rd were killed during their operations, victims of the artillery fire their deceptions attracted. Dozens more were wounded. The heaviest losses came during Operation Bouzonville on March 12, 1945, when German shells targeted the dummy positions near Picard, Germany. Captain Thomas G. Wells, the earnest young headquarters commandant, and Staff Sergeant George C. Peddle, the enterprising radio platoon sergeant, were killed in action. This operation, lasting only 33 hours, proved the most costly with 2 killed and 15 wounded. Multiple soldiers received Purple Hearts from shellings at Picard on March 13, 1945. These men fell performing a duty so secret their families wouldn't learn the true nature of their service for decades. The German military's failure to recognize the deception program represents one of the war's great intelligence failures. Post-war interrogations revealed that German commanders never suspected the existence of dedicated deception units. They attributed American unpredictability to superior intelligence, better coordination, or simple luck. Even when captured, German soldiers reported seeing rubber tanks being deflated. Intelligence officers dismissed these accounts as battle fatigue hallucinations. Colonel Clifford Simonson, who served as operations officer for the 23rd, later reflected on this blindness. German military doctrine, rooted in traditional combat philosophy, couldn't conceptualize units that existed solely for deception. The Wehrmacht trained soldiers to fight, not to pretend to fight. The concept of combat artists, military actors, and warrior illusionists lay outside their intellectual framework. This cognitive gap proved as decisive as any technological advantage. The scope of American achievement becomes clear through production statistics. The 23rd Headquarters Special Troops inventory included over 400 inflatable tanks, 250 artillery pieces, 1,000 vehicles, and 2,000 soldier mannequins. Support equipment encompassed 24 sound trucks, 500 speakers, 300 wire recorders, and 10,000 hours of recorded military sounds. The unit executed 22 major deception operations, each portraying forces 10 to 30 times their actual size. They impersonated 15 different divisions throughout the European campaign. May 8, 1945, Victory in Europe Day found the 23rd at Idar Oberstein, Germany. While celebrations erupted across the Allied armies, the Ghost Warriors faced a unique situation. Their entire wartime service remained classified. They couldn't discuss their operations, display unit insignia, or explain their service to anyone without proper clearance. Families would never know their soldiers had fought a war with rubber tanks and recorded sounds. The unit disbanded in September 1945. Members returned to civilian life carrying secrets they were legally forbidden to share. Bill Blass became a fashion icon without mentioning his military service involved creating illusions. Ellsworth Kelly achieved artistic fame while his wartime art remained classified. Art Kane revolutionized photography, but his most important photographic work documenting military deception stayed locked in government files. The veil of secrecy lasted 51 years. Not until 1996 did the United States government fully declassify the 23rd's operations. By then, many members had died without ever telling their stories. Those still alive finally received recognition for their unique contribution to victory. The revelation sparked historical re-evaluation. Battles assumed to demonstrate American tactical superiority actually succeeded through elaborate deception. German accounts of American unpredictability made sense when the existence of phantom divisions was revealed. Military historians calculated the strategic impact. The 23rd's operations influenced at least 15 major engagements. Conservative estimates suggested their deceptions saved 15,000 to 30,000 American lives. The economic efficiency was staggering, 1,105 men achieving effects that would have required multiple divisions of actual combat troops. The psychological impact on German forces proved immeasurable. Commanders who should have acted boldly hesitated, uncertain about American dispositions. Intelligence officers who might have detected actual weaknesses remained confused by false patterns. Modern military doctrine acknowledges the revolution the 23rd pioneered. Every major military now maintains deception units, though none match the scale and audacity of the original Ghost Army. Digital technology replaced inflatable tanks, but the principle remains: what enemies perceive shapes their decisions more than actual reality. The Russian Maskirovka doctrine explicitly references American World War II deception operations. Chinese military writings study the 23rd's techniques as foundational to information warfare. NATO deception planning follows frameworks established by the Ghost Army's operations. In February 2022, the surviving members of the 23rd Headquarters Special Troops and the 3,133rd Signal Service Company received the Congressional Gold Medal, America's highest civilian honor. Only 3 veterans attended the ceremony, the youngest 95 years old. Seymour Nussenbaum, who had painted division insignia on fake vehicles, stood in the Capitol Rotunda as congressional leaders praised operations kept secret for half a century. John Chrisman, who operated sonic equipment that projected recorded tank sounds, heard his wartime service finally acknowledged. Bernard Bluestein, who had answered a vague recruitment notice at his Cleveland art school, witnessed recognition that came 7 decades late. The citation read by House Speaker Nancy Pelosi captured their unique contribution. These soldiers fought a war that wasn't a war, created an enemy that never existed, and achieved victories through defeats that never happened. They proved that in modern warfare, the mind can be mightier than munitions, imagination more powerful than armor, and deception more decisive than destruction. The Ghost Army's legacy extends beyond military history. They demonstrated that creativity and intelligence could overcome numerical and material disadvantages. Artists became soldiers who fought with their talents intact. Engineers solved problems no military manual addressed. Actors performed for an audience that could never applaud, on stages where failure meant death. Their story challenges conventional understanding of courage. Traditional warriors face enemies directly, winning through superior skill or firepower. The 23rd faced enemies indirectly, winning by never fighting at all. They drew fire they couldn't return, attracted attacks they couldn't repel, and claimed victories they couldn't celebrate. This shadow war required a different kind of bravery, the courage to trust in illusion when surrounded by lethal reality. The technical innovations they pioneered transformed multiple fields. The inflatable structures developed for dummy tanks led to architectural applications in temporary shelters and emergency equipment. The acoustic research conducted for sonic deception advanced understanding of sound propagation and psychological acoustics. The visual deception techniques influenced everything from military camouflage to movie special effects. Several Ghost Army veterans founded special effects companies that dominated Hollywood for decades. The strategic principles they proved remain timeless. In an age of satellite surveillance and electronic intelligence, military deception has evolved but not disappeared. Modern conflicts in Iraq, Afghanistan, and Ukraine demonstrate that perception management remains crucial to military success. The Ghost Army showed that defeating an enemy's decision-making process could be more effective than defeating their forces. This cognitive warfare approach influences contemporary military planning at every level. Perhaps most significantly, the 23rd Headquarters Special Troops humanized warfare in unexpected ways. They proved that military victory didn't require matching enemy brutality or overwhelming destructive power. Intelligence, creativity, and imagination could achieve strategic objectives while minimizing casualties on both sides. Every German unit deceived by phantom forces was one that didn't face real American soldiers in lethal combat. The Ghost Warriors saved enemy lives even while helping defeat them. Their classified legacy created unique historical ironies. German veterans spent decades unable to explain defeats that seemed inexplicable. Accounts of being overwhelmed by superior American forces made no sense when post-war analysis showed actual American units were elsewhere. Only after declassification could German commanders understand they had fought ghosts. General Maximilian Fretta-Pico, who commanded the 148th Grenadier Division in Italy, learned in the 1990s that the American armored division that paralyzed his decision-making for 2 critical days had been inflatable tanks and recorded sounds projected by 145 men. The 3133rd Signal Service Company, operating in Italy, deserves special recognition. While the main Ghost Army operated in Northern Europe, this smaller unit conducted independent deceptions in the Mediterranean theatre. Their Operation Craftsman in April 1945 convinced German forces that a major armoured build-up was occurring in the Serchio Valley. The deception held German reserves in place, while actual Allied forces attacked along the coast. Using only sonic equipment and coordination with British units equipped with dummy tanks, they portrayed an entire armoured division preparing for assault. The human stories within the Ghost Army reveal the operation's true character. Sergeant Victor Dowd, who painted division patches and signs, later said the hardest part was maintaining the illusion off-duty. In French cafes and Belgian bars, they had to act like members of units they impersonated, telling consistent cover stories to anyone who might be listening. They wore false patches, carried fake orders, and lived fictional military identities. This method, acting in a combat zone, required constant vigilance. One slip revealing their true unit could compromise entire operations. Technical Sergeant Harold Dahl operated sonic equipment often within range of German artillery. He described the surreal experience of playing recorded tank sounds while actual shells exploded nearby, maintaining the audio illusion even under fire. The recordings had to continue regardless of danger, because any interruption might reveal the deception. Operators remained at their positions during bombardments that would have sent real tank crews to cover. This dedication to maintaining illusion under fire represented courage of the highest order. Private Harold Lehner, an artist before the war, found himself painting battle damage on inflatable tanks at night, working by shielded flashlight to avoid detection. Each dummy needed unique markings, unit numbers, and wear patterns to appear authentic in aerial photographs. The attention to detail was obsessive because a single obviously fake vehicle could expose entire operations. Lehner later became a renowned artist, but considered his wartime painting his most important work, art that saved lives. The post-war careers of Ghost Army veterans reflected their unique wartime experience. Many entered fields requiring creativity, deception, or performance. Beyond the famous names like Bill Blass and Ellsworth Kelly, Ghost Army veterans founded advertising agencies, became theater directors, developed television special effects, and pioneered computer graphics. Their military service had taught them that perception could be shaped, reality could be flexible, and creativity could achieve what force could not. The unit's influence on military art is particularly noteworthy. While combat artists traditionally documented warfare, the Ghost Army created art as warfare. Their sketches, paintings, and designs weren't meant to record military operations but to enable them. This functional military art, created under combat conditions for immediate tactical purposes, represents a unique category in art history. Museums now display Ghost Army sketches and paintings not as documentation, but as weapons themselves, art that fought and won battles. The sonic deception technology pioneered by the Ghost Army evolved into modern psychological operations. The massive speakers that projected tank sounds across World War II battlefields were ancestors of contemporary sonic weapons. The principle of using sound to confuse, demoralize, or deceive enemies continues in modern military operations. From Vietnam's Operation Wandering Soul to current sonic devices used for crowd control, the Ghost Army's audio warfare legacy persists. Examination of German records reveals how thoroughly the deceptions succeeded. Wehrmacht intelligence files contain hundreds of reports about American units that never existed in reported locations. Aerial reconnaissance photographs carefully annotated with tank counts and artillery positions actually show rubber dummies and wooden guns. Radio intercepts meticulously decoded and analyzed were scripted performances by Ghost Army operators. The German military's renowned efficiency and thoroughness worked against them as they carefully documented illusions as reality. The economics of deception warfare proved revolutionary. The entire Ghost Army operation from activation to deactivation cost approximately $15 million in 1945 dollars. A single infantry division cost $100 million annually to maintain. The Ghost Army simulated multiple divisions for a fraction of one division's cost. Each operation saved resources equivalent to hundreds of times the unit's budget. This return on investment influenced post-war military planning, demonstrating that unconventional warfare could achieve strategic effects at minimal cost. The ethical dimensions of deception warfare sparked post-war debate. International law permitted military deception, but prohibited certain forms like wearing enemy uniforms or using protected symbols. The Ghost Army operated within legal boundaries, but pushed conceptual limits. They wore false unit patches, itself a form of uniform violation. They impersonated specific units, potentially violating identity protocols. Yet their deceptions aimed to minimize casualties rather than maximize destruction. This ethical paradox, achieving military victory through elaborate dishonesty while serving humanitarian purposes, challenged traditional military ethics. Training for deception operations required revolutionary approaches. Traditional military training emphasized standardization, teaching soldiers identical responses to specific situations. The Ghost Army needed creative problem solvers who could improvise solutions to unprecedented challenges. Their training included theatrical improvisation, artistic techniques, and engineering innovation. Soldiers learned to think like German intelligence officers, anticipating what enemies expected to see and providing convincing simulations. This cognitive training differed radically from conventional military instruction. The weather challenges faced by the Ghost Army throughout operations demonstrated remarkable adaptation. In Normandy's summer heat, rubber tanks expanded and distorted, requiring constant adjustment. During autumn rains, water accumulation changed vehicle profiles, demanding new drainage solutions. Winter's cold made rubber brittle and affected sound propagation. Spring mud created different track patterns for real versus dummy vehicles. Each seasonal challenge required innovative solutions developed under combat conditions with immediate operational consequences. The role of the 406th Combat Engineer Company within the Ghost Army deserves special recognition. These 168 men provided security for deception operations while executing construction tasks that enhanced illusions. They built fake supply dumps, erected phantom command posts, and used bulldozers to create tank tracks for vehicles that didn't exist. Operating conventional engineer equipment, they bridged the gap between illusion and reality. Their work grounded fantasies in physical evidence German reconnaissance could photograph and analyze. Signal operations by the Ghost Army's radio operators achieved remarkable sophistication. They didn't simply transmit fake messages, but replicated entire communication networks of divisions they impersonated. Each operator developed multiple radio personalities, distinctive transmission styles German interceptors would recognize as different personnel. They maintained communication logs, supply requests, and personnel reports for units that existed only in their transmissions. This method, acting via Morse code, required extraordinary skill and consistency. The Ghost Army's experience at the Battle of the Bulge illustrated their vulnerability. Unlike combat units that could defend themselves, the 23rd's defensive capability was essentially theatrical. When German forces approached their positions near Luxembourg, they could only maintain their deception and hope actual combat units arrived before enemies discovered the illusion. This helplessness in the face of real danger created unique psychological stress. They were soldiers who couldn't fight, warriors whose only weapon was pretense. The relationship between the Ghost Army and the actual units they impersonated created complex dynamics. Real divisions knew phantom versions of themselves operated elsewhere but couldn't acknowledge this knowledge. The 30th Infantry Division's veterans later expressed amazement, learning that while they fought in one sector, actors portrayed them hundreds of miles away. This multiplication of identity, units simultaneously existing in multiple locations, challenged conventional military understanding of presence and position. Intelligence gathered from post-war interrogations revealed German confusion about American capabilities. Wehrmacht officers consistently overestimated American strength by factors of 2 to 3. They reported facing divisions that outnumbered actual American forces in entire sectors. This systematic overestimation, created by Ghost Army operations, influenced German strategic decisions throughout the campaign. Reserves were held to counter phantom threats. Reinforcements deployed against illusions. Attacks were cancelled, fearing imaginary counterattacks. The Ghost Army's final operation wasn't military, but bureaucratic. Returning to the United States in July 1945, they faced immediate disbanding and classification of their entire service. Unlike other veterans who could share war stories, Ghost Army members signed secrecy agreements prohibiting discussion of their service. They returned to civilian life, carrying invisible medals for battles nobody knew they fought. This enforced silence created unique psychological burdens, warriors who couldn't explain their war. The 1996 declassification finally allowed recognition, but came too late for most members. Of the original 1,105 Ghost Warriors, fewer than 100 survived to see their story revealed. Families learned decades after deaths that fathers and grandfathers had been military artists, combat actors, and battlefield illusionists. The delayed recognition created bittersweet vindication, validation that came after those who most deserved it had passed. This temporal injustice highlighted the cost of necessary secrecy in democratic societies. Contemporary military deception owes everything to the Ghost Army's innovations. Modern inflatable decoys use materials they pioneered. Sonic deception follows principles they established. Visual deception employs techniques they developed. Radio deception uses protocols they created. Every military deception operation references, consciously or not, foundations laid by 1,105 Americans who fought World War II with rubber tanks and recorded sounds. They transformed deception from tactical trick to strategic doctrine. The Ghost Army proved that in modern warfare, controlling what enemies believe can be more powerful than controlling what they face. Every dummy tank that drew fire protected a real tank elsewhere. Every phantom division that attracted reinforcements weakened enemy positions facing actual units. Every successful deception multiplied American combat power without adding a single soldier. This cognitive multiplication of force revolutionized military planning, demonstrating that perception management could achieve effects previously requiring massive material superiority. Their legacy challenges fundamental assumptions about military power. Traditional thinking equates strength with firepower, victory with destruction, courage with combat. The Ghost Army achieved strength through imagination, victory through misdirection, and demonstrated courage by facing death without means to fight back. They proved that military genius could manifest in theatrical performance, that artistic talent could win battles, and that creative intelligence could overcome material disadvantage. In the end, the Ghost Army's greatest victory was saving lives on both sides. Every successful deception prevented a battle, avoided a confrontation, eliminated a killing ground. They fought a war against war itself, using illusion to prevent the collision of actual forces. German soldiers who survived because they defended against phantoms never knew they owed their lives to American artists. American soldiers who lived because enemies were elsewhere never realized their survival depended on rubber tanks and recorded sounds. The 23rd Headquarters Special Troops stands unique in military history. No other unit fought entire campaigns through pure deception. No other soldiers won battles by never fighting. No other warriors achieved victory through performance art under fire. They were the Ghost Army, and their invisible battlefield presence changed visible history. They proved that in modern warfare, what enemies never knew could indeed hurt them, and what wasn't there could defeat what was. Their phantom divisions, inflatable tanks, and recorded sounds achieved what Clausewitz never imagined, war by other means that weren't war at all. The story of German officers never knowing American. Dummy tanks were leading them into traps represents more than military deception. It demonstrates that human perception shapes reality, that belief influences behavior, and that controlling what enemies think they know can be more powerful than controlling what they actually face. The Ghost Army didn't defeat the German military through superior firepower or overwhelming numbers. They defeated them through superior imagination, creative intelligence, and the revolutionary recognition that in modern warfare, the mind was the ultimate battlefield, and whoever controlled perception controlled victory.